The struggle to maintain a consistent meditation practice has become one of the most common frustrations faced by sincere spiritual seekers in our modern world, where the demands of daily life seem to constantly interrupt our aspirations for inner development and conscious awareness. Yet this very difficulty points toward a revolutionary understanding that Sri Aurobindo offered over a century ago. The recognition that our inability to meditate consistently may not be a personal failing, but rather an invitation to discover a more integral approach to spiritual practice that transforms ordinary life itself into continuous meditation. Instead of compartmentalizing spirituality into designated periods of sitting practice, Sri Aurobindo's teachings reveal how every moment of conscious living can become a doorway to the same depths of awareness and peace that we seek through formal meditation, creating a seamless integration of inner development with outer engagement that sustains itself naturally without the strain and inconsistency that characterize so many well-intentioned but ultimately unsustainable meditation routines. The foundation of this approach lies in understanding that meditation is not primarily about achieving particular states of consciousness or maintaining specific postures and breathing patterns, but rather about cultivating a quality of inner awareness that can operate continuously regardless of external circumstances or physical positions. This awareness, what Sri Aurobindo called the witness consciousness, naturally develops when we learn to observe the movements of our thoughts, emotions, and sensations without being completely identified with or controlled by them. The remarkable discovery that emerges through this practice is that the very activities we thought were preventing us from meditating, cooking meals, walking to appointments, listening to others speak, even managing challenging situations at home or work can become vehicles for deepening the same mindful presence that we cultivate during formal sitting practice. This transformation begins with recognizing that the restlessness and distraction we experience during attempted meditation sessions are not obstacles to overcome, but rather expressions of our natural vitality seeking conscious direction and purpose. Rather than fighting against the mind's tendency to wander or becoming frustrated with our inability to maintain prolonged concentration, we learn to work with these movements as opportunities to develop greater awareness and patience. The thought that pulls our attention away from breath awareness becomes a chance to practice gentle redirection. The physical discomfort that arises during sitting becomes an invitation to explore the relationship between body and consciousness. The emotional reactions that surface during quiet moments become doorways to understanding and healing patterns that operate unconsciously throughout our daily lives. What makes Sri Aurobindo's approach so practical and sustainable is its recognition that spiritual development serves life rather than escaping from it, enhancing our capacity for skillful action and authentic relationship rather than withdrawing us into isolated states of personal transcendence. The awareness cultivated through conscious living naturally improves our effectiveness in professional responsibilities, our presence in family relationships, and our ability to contribute meaningfully to the communities and causes we care about. Instead of creating tension between spiritual aspirations and worldly obligations, this integral approach reveals how inner development and outer service can enhance and strengthen each other in a harmonious synthesis that brings coherence and purpose to all aspects of our existence. The practical application of this understanding begins with simple experiments in bringing meditative awareness to routine activities that we perform anyway as part of daily life. The morning ritual of preparing breakfast becomes an opportunity to practice mindfulness of movement, attention to sensory experience, and appreciation for the nourishment that sustains our physical existence. The commute to work or appointments becomes a mobile meditation where we can observe the changing landscape of thoughts and emotions whilst maintaining awareness of breathing and bodily sensation. Even conversations with family members, friends, or colleagues become venues for practicing presence, deep listening, and conscious response rather than automatic reaction. Perhaps most importantly, this approach addresses the underlying reasons why formal meditation practice often becomes inconsistent or abandoned entirely. The guilt and self-judgment that arise when we miss meditation sessions are transformed into compassionate understanding that spiritual development is not measured by adherence to rigid schedules, but by the gradual increase in conscious awareness throughout all our activities and relationships. The sense of failure that accompanies periods when sitting practice feels difficult or unproductive gives way to recognition that these challenges are actually signs of growth avoidance, that consciousness is expanding beyond familiar boundaries and learning to operate in more complex and dynamic circumstances. The integration of contemplative awareness with daily activities also reveals dimensions of spiritual experience that remain hidden when meditation is confined to quiet, controlled environments. The patience that develops through conscious engagement with frustrating situations at home becomes deeper and more authentic than tolerance cultivated only in peaceful meditation sessions. The compassion that emerges through mindful interaction with difficult people proves more genuine and sustainable than loving kindness generated only during formal loving-kindness practice. The clarity that arises through conscious decision-making amidst complex life circumstances demonstrates more practical wisdom than insights that occur only during retreats from worldly responsibilities. The revolutionary aspect of Sri Aurobindo's approach becomes most evident when we understand that he viewed all existence as a manifestation of divine consciousness, exploring and expressing its infinite creative potential through the apparent limitations and challenges of material existence. From this perspective, the difficulties we face in maintaining formal meditation practice are not signs of spiritual inadequacy, but rather invitations to discover more mature and integral forms of spiritual development that embrace rather than transcend the full spectrum of human experience. The restless mind that won't settle during sitting practice may be signaling its readiness to engage with more dynamic forms of contemplative awareness that honor its natural curiosity and creative intelligence, whilst channeling these qualities toward conscious evolution rather than endless distraction. This understanding naturally leads to what we might call meditation in action, the cultivation of inner stillness and awareness that can operate seamlessly within the most demanding and complex circumstances of contemporary life. The parent managing multiple children's needs whilst preparing dinner discovers that conscious attention to each task and interaction can create moments of profound presence and connection that nourish the soul more deeply than solitary meditation sessions. The individual navigating traffic during rush hour learns that patient awareness of breathing and gentle acceptance of circumstances beyond personal control can transform potential stress into opportunities for developing equanimity and trust in larger rhythms and patterns that govern all experience. The beauty of this approach lies in its recognition that consistency in spiritual practice doesn't require identical activities performed at fixed times, but rather the maintenance of conscious intention and receptive awareness that can adapt fluidly to whatever circumstances arise throughout each day. The meditation practice that couldn't be sustained for 20 minutes in the morning transforms into continuous mindfulness that operates during coffee preparation, shower time, walking between appointments, and brief pauses throughout the day that reset our awareness and reconnect us with deeper sources of peace and creativity. Instead of measuring spiritual progress by accumulated hours of formal sitting, we begin to notice the gradual increase in moments lived consciously, responses made from wisdom rather than reactivity, and actions performed from service rather than mere personal ambition. The practical methods for developing this integral awareness are surprisingly accessible, and require no special equipment, designated spaces, or disruption of existing routines and responsibilities. The foundation practice involves learning to return attention to present moment experience whenever we notice that our minds have wandered into anxious planning about future events or regretful rumination about past experiences. This gentle redirection can happen during any activity whilst washing dishes. We notice when thoughts drift toward workplace concerns and simply return attention to the sensory experience of warm water and soap bubbles. Whilst walking, we observe when the mind begins obsessing about relationship difficulties and gently guide awareness back to the rhythm of footsteps and the feeling of air moving in and out of the lungs. The development of what Sri Aurobindo called constant remembrance occurs naturally as we practice bringing conscious awareness to the transitions between activities throughout each day. The moment between finishing one task and beginning another becomes a brief pause for conscious breathing and setting, the space between hearing a challenging statement and formulating our response becomes an opportunity for accessing deeper wisdom and compassion, rather than reacting from conditioned patterns of defensiveness or judgment. These micro-meditations, accumulated throughout the day, often prove more transformative than longer formal sessions, because they develop the muscle of conscious awareness within the actual circumstances where we need it most. Perhaps most significantly, this approach reveals that the spiritual qualities we seek to cultivate through meditation, peace, clarity, compassion, and wisdom actually develop more authentically and sustainably when practiced within the complex interpersonal dynamics and practical challenges of daily life, rather than only during solitary retreat from worldly engagement. The patience that emerges through conscious interaction with family members during stressful situations proves more genuine and reliable than equanimity cultivated only in quiet, controlled environments. The loving kindness that develops through mindful service to others in concrete ways demonstrates more substantial transformation than compassion generated only through visualization practices during formal meditation sessions. The sustainability of this integrated approach becomes evident as we discover that living meditatively actually increases rather than depletes our energy for engaging with daily responsibilities and challenges. Instead of feeling torn between spiritual aspirations and practical obligations, we find that conscious awareness enhances our effectiveness in work, improves our relationships, and brings a quality of joy and meaning to routine activities that previously felt mechanical or burdensome. The morning routine becomes a gentle, awakening ritual. Household chores become moving meditation. Conversations become opportunities for practicing presence and authentic communication. Even challenging situations become laboratories for developing inner strength and creative, problem-solving abilities that serve both spiritual development and practical effectiveness. The community aspect of this practice naturally emerges as we begin to radiate the qualities of consciousness that develop through consistent mindful living. Others sense when they're interacting with someone who brings genuine presence and attention to conversations rather than distracted multitasking. They respond more openly to communication that comes from listening deeply rather than planning what to say next. Children feel safer and more seen when cared for by adults who are genuinely present rather than physically available but mentally elsewhere. Colleagues appreciate working with someone who brings calm awareness to stressful situations, rather than adding to collective anxiety through reactive responses to challenging circumstances. If these insights about transforming daily life into continuous spiritual practice are stirring something within you, if you can sense the possibility of finding the consistency and depth you've been seeking through meditation in the very activities you're already engaged in throughout each day, then you're already walking the path that Sri Aurobindo illuminated, the recognition that all life becomes yoga when approached with conscious intention and receptive awareness. This isn't just another technique for managing busy schedules or making spiritual practice more convenient. It's a fundamental realization that consciousness itself is what we're seeking, and consciousness is available in every moment, every breath, every interaction when we remember to welcome it with open hearts and willing minds. I'd be deeply honored if you'd join our community of practitioners by subscribing to this channel. But what moves me even more is knowing that your own experiments with bringing meditative awareness into ordinary activities are contributing to a quiet revolution in how human beings understand and practice spirituality in the modern world. What aspects of daily life have surprised you with their potential for contemplative depth? And where have you discovered unexpected moments of peace and clarity amidst the apparent chaos of contemporary existence? The ultimate transformation that emerges through sustained practice of Sri Aurobindo's approach to meditation in daily life is the dissolution of the artificial boundary between formal spiritual practice and ordinary living, revealing that consciousness itself is both the means and the goal of all authentic spiritual development. What begins as experiments in bringing mindful awareness to routine activities gradually becomes a natural way of being that doesn't require constant effort or vigilant attention to maintain, but rather flows spontaneously from a deepening recognition of the sacred dimension that underlies and permeates all existence. The meditation cushion that once seemed necessary for accessing peace and clarity becomes optional equipment for a awareness that can operate just as effectively whilst standing in queues, participating in meetings, or caring for others during illness and difficulty. This integration creates what we might call effortless consistency, the kind of spiritual practice that sustains itself naturally because it enhances rather than competes with our engagement in worldly responsibilities and relationships. The mother caring for young children discovers that conscious attention to their needs and responses becomes a form of devotional practice that deepens her capacity for unconditional love and patient service. The individual managing household finances learns that approaching money decisions with contemplative awareness and consideration for long-term consequences becomes a form of wisdom practice that serves both practical effectiveness and spiritual development. Even routine maintenance activities like cleaning and organizing become opportunities for cultivating mindfulness, appreciating simple pleasures, and expressing care for the environments that support our daily lives. The scientific understanding that supports this approach reveals that the neuroplasticity of the human brain responds more effectively to consistent brief practices integrated throughout the day than two intensive sessions separated by long periods of unconscious living. The neural pathways that support mindful awareness, emotional regulation, and creative problem-solving strengthen more rapidly when activated regularly in diverse contexts, rather than only during formal meditation sessions. The stress reduction benefits that many people seek through meditation prove more substantial and lasting when contemplative. Awareness is applied directly to the situations that create stress, rather than only practiced during separate relaxation periods that may feel disconnected from actual life challenges. The psychological dimension of this transformation involves what Sri Aurobindo described as the gradual emergence of the psychic being, the authentic spiritual self that knows how to navigate life's complexities with wisdom, compassion, and creative intelligence, rather than being driven by unconscious patterns of fear, desire, and social conditioning. This deeper identity naturally develops through conscious engagement with the full spectrum of human experience rather than through attempts to transcend or escape the conditions of embodied existence. The challenges that once seemed to interfere with spiritual practice, difficult relationships, financial pressures, health concerns, and social responsibilities, become precisely the circumstances through which this authentic self learns to express its inherent qualities of strength, patience, generosity, and clear-seeing wisdom. Perhaps most beautifully, this approach reveals that the consistency we seek in spiritual practice emerges naturally when our inner development serves purposes larger than personal peace of mind or individual salvation. The awareness cultivated through mindful daily living automatically extends itself into service to family well-being, community health, and the healing of larger social and environmental challenges that require conscious participation from individuals who can maintain clarity and compassion amidst complexity and uncertainty. The meditation practice that once felt like a private self-improvement project transforms into conscious participation in the evolution of human consciousness and the creation of more wise and compassionate forms of civilization. The ripple effects of this transformation extend far beyond what we might initially imagine, influencing the quality of all our relationships and contributions in ways that create positive feedback loops, supporting continued growth and service. The colleague who brings genuine presence to workplace interactions naturally inspires others to communicate more authentically and collaboratively. The friend who listens with full attention during conversations creates space for deeper sharing and mutual understanding that strengthens social bonds and community resilience. The citizen who approaches civic responsibilities with contemplative awareness and concern for collective well-being contributes to the emergence of more conscious and effective forms of democratic participation and social organization. The ultimate recognition that emerges through sustained practice is that what we call meditation and what we call life are not separate activities requiring different approaches, but rather different aspects of the same fundamental reality consciousness, exploring and expressing its infinite creative potential through the apparent diversity and complexity of embodied existence. This understanding brings tremendous freedom from spiritual perfectionism and the pressure to achieve particular states or demonstrate specific attainments, because we discover that consciousness itself is already perfect and complete, simply learning to recognize and express itself more fully through whatever circumstances and opportunities arise in our daily experience. The vision that Sri Aurobindo offered and that becomes accessible through patient practice of meditation in daily life is not of human beings who have transcended their humanity through spiritual achievement, but rather of humanity that has awakened to its divine nature and learned to express this awakening through more conscious, creative, and compassionate forms of individual and collective living. This transformation doesn't require abandoning worldly responsibilities or achieving superhuman capacities, but rather brings a quality of presence, wisdom, and loving service to whatever roles and relationships give our lives meaning and purpose. As we reach the conclusion of this exploration into transforming everyday life into consistent spiritual practice, my heart overflows with gratitude for every soul who recognizes that the meditation practice we seek is not separate from the life we're already living, but is rather the conscious embrace of existence itself as a continuous opportunity for awakening and service. The struggles with consistency that have frustrated so many sincere seekers are not evidence of spiritual inadequacy, but rather invitations to discover more mature and integral forms of practice that honor both our human circumstances and our divine potential. If these insights about meditation in daily life have touched something authentic in your own experience, if you can sense the possibility of finding the consistency and depth you've been seeking through conscious engagement with ordinary activities rather than despite them, then you're already embarking on the path that Sri Aurobindo illuminated, the recognition that all existence becomes sacred when met with aware and loving attention. I would be deeply moved if you'd continue this exploration with us by subscribing to our channel. But what inspires me most is hearing about your own discoveries along this journey of integrated spiritual living. What moments in your daily routine have surprised you with their capacity for contemplative depth and spiritual nourishment? How have you found ways to maintain mindful awareness during challenging or busy periods when formal meditation seemed impossible? What insights about consistency and spiritual practice have emerged through your experiments with bringing meditative awareness into ordinary activities? Please share your experiences, questions, and discoveries in the comments below. Your journey of transforming daily life into continuous practice illuminates possibilities for all of us who are learning that the spiritual path leads not away from our human responsibilities, but deeper into conscious engagement with existence itself. This exploration isn't about finding more time for meditation or perfecting spiritual techniques, but about recognizing that we already live within the sacred dimension we've been seeking, and that every moment offers a fresh invitation to awaken to the miracle of conscious existence expressing itself through whatever circumstances life graciously provides for our continued learning, growth, and service to the evolution of love and wisdom in our world.